I'm Julia Davis, a film major who stumbled into the business world with no experience in 2006. I was able to fail enough to learn how to run a 7-figure business and have provided consulting services to over 200 individually owned companies. Through this podcast, I hope to provide some perspective on the growth and grit it takes to accomplish big goals and share some hard lessons I've had to learn along the way. Today on the Growth and Grit podcast, we're here with Ashley Fierro, who is a professional makeup artist and has created a scalable business through makeup artistry. But that's not where you started, right?
Not.
So can you walk us through kind of how you became or, got into the industry of being a makeup artist and what drew you to that from a previous past?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
Sure.
First of all, but yeah, my story is non-traditional. It was kind of accidental, to be completely honest. So my previous career, I traveled Europe. I was a territory manager, and I was in my early 20s telling 40-year-olds how to run their business, which, as you can imagine, didn't go over very well. I didn't have a ton of experience or life experience, and they were like, "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" But I worked in that industry for a while, and I had always been interested in makeup and frankly just art in general. And I was doing makeup for friends and family and people who were starting brands, and we would do shoots and things like that, and it was always just very fun. But my focus was always my real job.
Right.
And uh the long and short of it is that real job, I was told I needed to go sort out a problem. There was a logistical problem that I needed to figure out. And I went out into the world and found the problem, and it happened to be in-house. And when I brought that information to the powers that be, it did not go over very well. And I had a conversation with the CEO in his big office, just him and me. And he told me that I was a cancer to the company, and how dare I point the finger at ourselves, and basically, you're terrible. And at my early 24 years old, I think, 23, I was like, this is insane. Like, how dare you talk to me this way and tell me to go find this problem? And now telling me that I'm the problem. And I just had that aha moment at a very young age. Like, there is absolutely no way that I'm going to work for anybody else. And so, in conjunction with some health problems and multiple hip surgeries, I had some downtime and literally on my back. And my boyfriend, at the time, now husband, was like, hey, why don't you just take some time and focus on doing makeup? You've been doing a ton of it when you're, in between trips to Europe. Why don't you just do that for a little bit and just do something that makes you happy, and then figure out your next step. And slowly I was able to go from being on my back to sitting up, and then able to work again. And I started to do makeup. I just was like, yeah, I'm just gonna find my joy again. I was jaded and pissed off, and I never wanted to be in a position where somebody else was going to determine my worth or how much I could make. And it started from that point forward, and it literally never looked back.
Now going back to the makeup world.
Yeah.
So you start your makeup business. Did you have an idea of what it would be like going in, and was it different when you got in there? Or, what was like a misconception about the makeup world that I think, that you're like, people think it's like this, but it's not actually?
Yeah, I mean, I never went out into the world to become a makeup artist. Like, that was never my thing. I was this career-driven, I'm going to be traveling all over the world and this business boss babe, that was like my goal.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed painting, and I really enjoyed makeup. And I had an aunt who was a makeup artist who I love dearly. But at the time, she told me that, don't go into this industry, because by the time you're 30, you're going to be phased out. And it's going to be the new, young, lightest, brightest person's going to take your spot. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm having fun, so it doesn't really matter. And I have this other job.
Yeah.
And then once I got in it, it was like, oh my God, that's not true. It's like, the more experience you have, the more you get booked, But it took a while to kind of adjust my mindset. And then also I loved it so much, and it was so easy for me. It just came naturally for me that I couldn't convince myself that it was a real job because like work is supposed to be hard. And I had this other crazy job where I was working like European hours and Asian hours, and I was like 24/7, crazy, 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 travel, travel, travel. And it was hard, currency fluctuations, like, math.
Yeah.
And it was hard. And so I couldn't like mentally get on board that like, this could be a job. So then once I was in it, I think one of the bigger misconceptions that I experienced is like, I specialize in natural radiant makeup. We do a lot of commercial, a lot of lifestyle, a lot of real people, a lot of just accessible things. And I always was like kind of looked at weird because I never wore a lot of makeup. My style was not like all this crazy avant-garde, like Instagram, gems and jewels and colors and stuff, I never was drawn to that. And so people wouldn't really even believe me that I was a makeup artist. And I have a story where I have a studio space. I was looking for a bigger one. And I had my baby at the time. She was maybe a year old. So she had her on my hip, and I was looking at places with the realtor, and the realtor was like, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a makeup artist." He's like, "You don't look like one." And I said, "You just lost your commission. This is a great place, but I'm not going to rent it. Sorry, because I don't have to fit your mold. And this is just who I am." So I think a lot of times, people perceive like, oh, makeup artist is over the top glamazon. And that's cool. Like, I respect the artistry. I think it's really neat. It's an awesome form of self-expression. It just is not me. However, now, like, hindsight's 2020. Like, that is what I built my business on. And that was essentially what made me so successful.
It's just the natural beauty.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people are after, just to highlight their own self.
I think so.
And a lot of people, not everybody, but
there's definitely
a space for that.
Exactly.
For sure. I love that.
Part of my internal process is that I always have to have a phone conversation with whomever is coming in. I don't care if it's just like you coming in for a party or you need to do like a branded, headshot or something like that. Like, I want to get to know you. And by doing so, I can really understand if we are aligned in terms of style. Of course, I can do any kind of makeup. But my like special sauce is creating a look for you that's going to bring out your best features, make you feel like your best self, so that when you are in front of the camera in an uncomfortable position, that you feel amazing. And so that phone call is key, because in that phone call, you really get to know what the person's looking for. And you can see if it's the right fit for both you and for them. And most of the time in that conversation, I find out that it's not the right fit. And so now that I'm a mom, I know that my time is valuable, and I've done the math. I know what it costs. And so if I'm working with somebody that is not in alignment, or that it's going to be grindy or difficult, it's just not worth the time to go do it. And usually you find that if you say yes to that one person that is giving you the kind of, I don't know about this vibe, usually your most ideal client will show up 45 minutes later. You'll get that ding on your computer and you're like, oh, dang it, same day, same everything. And I could have said yes to my dream client, and now I'm working with somebody that feels grindy, that doesn't feel good. The universe shows up in very powerful ways. So I've just learned to trust my instinct. And if it just doesn't feel right, or the conversation doesn't flow, or just what they're looking for, I ask them very poignant questions like, how do you want to feel? And it totally catches people off guard, because they just think like, okay, how much, what time, and where? I'm like, well, what are you wearing? What's your brand? How do you show up in life? Is that in alignment with how you want to look in the shoot? Do you see clients face to face? Like, how do you show up when you see clients? And they're unprepared usually.
Yeah.
But if you get a client that can answer those questions, it's like, oh yeah, that's a really good point. You know what? Yeah. Okay, cool. And it's a collaboration. It's like, okay, that's my person. That's who I'm going to be spending time with. So the random thing is that I actually end up saying no more than I say yes.
I think even in small business, people try to retain employees that probably shouldn't be retained, right? That are giving you all these signals that they just are not the right fit. And it's like, well, let's just try to keep them on. And the longer you keep that person on, the more of a problem it creates for your business, for your other people, for long-term development. But it's like, well, they're creating income, but they shouldn't even be there, because it's just hurting everything in their process. So I think that's such a good message for business in general, and employees, even people that you work with, and it's like, if you're employing people that that are showing signs that this is not the right fit, you got to let them go.
You really do. You have to know when to cut your losses. And it also needs to be, just as it's beneficial for me having somebody work for me, it needs to be beneficial for them. I don't want them going to work going, ugh, like, oh man, I got to do this today. I want them to go to work being excited because it translates. Like, our job is forward facing, and our attitude and energy that we bring to the table, people can feel, and so if they're not happy or just kind of blah about it, about whatever they're doing, then let's not do this.
Right. Everybody
Yeah.
has a bad experience.
Yeah.
So something that I was going to bring up earlier was, I think there's a misconception of, like, if you do the makeup for a Vogue magazine, you make all this money. It's like, oh, they hire you and they pay you thousands of dollars to do the makeup, and you're like, actually,
Not
that's
really.
not the case. Or if you work for like a celebrity and do their makeup every day, like, you make all this money. It's like, well, your brand is on display, so you actually pay to get the job to do that, which I thought is just like something that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, it's not necessarily you have to like pay money, but a lot of times you're just getting it for credit, or yeah, there might be times where you're paying to fly yourself somewhere, and so you're paying in a different way. But yeah, if you want to work in these I guess like high profile or sought after positions that give you this notoriety, it's not all glamorous and exciting and you know you're making all kinds of money. It's very, very different. So when you say like, oh, you're going to get work with Vogue, well, truth be told, you might get paid a small amount, or you might be given some makeup that would be, mentioned in the caption that they used all, Gucci beauty or something.
Right.
But it's not usually more than that. And so when I realized that quickly in the process, that, oh my gosh, how cool would that be? It's like, yeah, it'd be cool. But for me, the bottom line is the most important thing. I have to put food on the table. I provide for my family. So to me, that's not where I put my time and energy, because I want to, grow our family in a positive direction, generational wealth. All of that's really important to me. And being featured in Vogue really isn't. Love Vogue, but not.
Right. Absolutely. So when it comes to a lot of your businesses in California, because that's where you grew up and where you started and have all these contacts, and a lot of your team is out there now that you've developed and built. So what's your travel schedule like?
Well, it's sometimes once a week, for sure twice a month. But right now it's about once a week where I'm
Flying back and forth.
between Austin and San Diego, or like in a couple of days I'm headed to Mexico for a week. It just depends on where my clients are. But I am usually traveling on a plane about once a week.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot.
So how do you balance that, having kids and, with that work-life balance? Like, how do you do that?
I have a very supportive husband, and every couple of years everyone goes through a different season, right? And so we are in the season where my husband is essentially a stay-at-home dad, and he takes care of our kids, and we work together and have, as we're drinking coffee, little powwows of, okay, this is what's coming up. These are the opportunities that I have. This one pays really great, or this one's, not so great. And what are we going to decide to invest my time to fly to do? Or what am I going to have my team do? Or what's feasible? What's going on with the kids' schedule? And so we just have to sit down and kind of see what's going to work best for us. And obviously I try and bank my jobs together and communicate very clearly with my clients that I'm in 2 locations. And so if they want to work with me, then we can do these dates. And if that doesn't work for you, no problem. You can work with my trained team. They've been with me for 14 years. They're amazing. But we just have to be very much on the same page.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of conversations about like what is worth our time and away from the kids. And sometimes I just have to pull the plug, no, I'm not going. That'd be amazing. I'd love to go. This is my favorite client.
It's not bad.
I just can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important to have. That open communication is huge. I think, so everyone's on the same page, but also the flexibility and the freedom to be able to make your own schedule, I think, is just such an added benefit to life, to be able to do that and not a company saying, hey, you have to be here for this amount of time. You have to do this. You have to do that. And you're kind of like, this is not a good time for me, but it doesn't matter. It needs to be done, versus saying, okay, let me look at my calendar and pick the times that I can do stuff and then put the clients in those times. I think that's really neat.
Yeah. And being an entrepreneur, that's one of the things. I don't want somebody to tell me how much money I can make, and I want to work on my own schedule because I work really hard. I work all day long, whether I'm with a client or not. And I like that. I like being able to put the time and energy into things when I need to. And when I need to unplug and be with my kid who's sick or dealing with something at school, then I want to be able to, drop in and be like, hey, principal, we're going to have a meeting and it's going to be at, 11 in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be there. I want to be able to do that. And to me, building the life that I find to be the best for us is huge. Ultimately, that's what I want. I want to be able to do what I need to do when I need to do it. And creating this business is allowed me to do that.
And let's talk about the scaling, right? Because in my head, being a makeup artist is kind of like a one-woman show or a one-man show, but you figured out a way to build and develop and scale a business where you have 14. Is that what you said? No, 14 years they've been working for
14
you.
years, yeah.
For you, how many people do you have on, kind of on staff, but on call to do jobs?
I have 2 girls that are like all the time.
Yeah.
They're my like go-to, couldn't do life without them, where they are working with me predominantly, 5 to 7 days a week. And then we have about 7 to 8 people that we call upon.
Just on call.
Yeah, in California and then also in Austin. So it depends what my girls that have been with me a long time, they've seen it all. They've worked with all of my clients before, whether by themselves or with me. And so I feel like, okay, if I went down with the flu, like I could send them no problem. I don't even have to give them like a briefing. They're really great. So yeah, we've been able to scale by growing the team. And by doing so, that includes a lot of training that we do on the front end.
How many hours do you think, estimate? Like how many hours before you're like, this person is good to go?
It depends on the person, obviously. But I would say, it could be upwards of 100 hours. And we do a lot of training and testing. They bring in models. I put them on the spot. I put them in difficult situations. And then ultimately they have to do my makeup as their like end test, which always kind of freaks them out.
Yeah.
But it's done on purpose. And then they work alongside me as like an assistant for a very long time so that I can see how they interact with a client. What kind of questions are they asking me? What kind of questions am I asking in front of them, in front of the client to help show them like, okay, this is what we do. This is how we handle ourselves. This is what we do in difficult situations. And then once I feel like they're ready, then they can take their own clients.
Yes.
So that's one element of being able to scale. And I also keep a studio there for them so that they have access to it. They can see our clients there. It's streamlined. It's consistent. But also creating an online course where I am teaching creatives, predominantly makeup artists and hairstylists, how to turn their creative passion into a full-time career. Because most people in our industry, they don't know how to run a business. And I had the quiet luxury of being in corporate America and kind of infusing myself into this beauty creative space. And I was able to take what worked there and bring it into my makeup business. And that has been fantastic because not only has that helped transform people's lives or just give them structure or, whatever they're lacking, but now I have this incredible network of people that I can call upon. Or if I have, let's say, a bride that's getting married in Tuscany and they need to find an artist that is reputable, I have one, because we have people all over the world that I have had lots of conversation with. I've analyzed all of their work. I have helped, direct them from a mentorship perspective. And it's just been invaluable because now I have this incredible network of artists that I can help support, but also help my clients.
Yeah. And I think something that you mentioned when we talked on the phone the other day was that people don't understand what to charge.
Yes.
Right. So like the value of time and overhead and all of that comes from a business background that you had previous, figuring out like, okay, this is your bottom line. You have to charge at least this much to make money back. But like you said before, if it's just fun and you enjoy doing it, sometimes you undercharge because you're like, I just enjoy it, so it's fun for me, versus saying like, no, this is what my time is actually worth. So can you walk, us through like how you figure that out, and maybe like the equation and then the conversation that you would have with somebody maybe who's trying to do that?
Yeah, I think, when you drop into pricing, especially as a female entrepreneur, there's a lot of mixed emotions that go into pricing yourself.
Yeah.
Especially in a service-based business, because it's so subjective, right?
Yeah.
What I'm doing is not like, oh, here's a widget and that costs this much.
Right.
This is, you're creating something. And so when we're talking about value and worth, I think when women hear the word worth, we instantly drop into something that is like our self-worth. It's emotional. It's tied to a lot of triggering words like, am I good enough? Is this, this person down the way has more experience, but I think I'm better than them. And what does that make me for thinking that? And there's all this like emotional baggage that's tied to worth. And I think, I'm a woman, I still have those feelings, but when it comes to business, I think very logically, very like masculine, very mathematical. And it has helped me a lot. And so when we talk about value, it's really just math.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a dollar sign, And so when I talk to students, we kind of go through this experience and they get wishy-washy about it because they instantly want to go to the emotional side. So we bring them right back to the math side. And we go, okay, so here's what our equation's going to look like. Let's talk about all of your expenses. Write them all down.
Mm-hmm.
And then how many clients do you see a month? Okay, write that down and do a quick division. All right, so this is what it costs you per client to have them sit in your chair. Well, that doesn't account for how much you're getting paid. So we need to add in how much you want to get paid to see this client for all of the work leading into it. So that's the phone calls, the conversations, putting together the contract, following up on the contract. And then after you do the application, you have to clean, you have to sanitize, you send a thank you note, request a review, whatever it might be. That time. So let's give ourselves an hourly rate. So we had those two things together and they start going, oh crap, this is more than what I'm charging.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, but by the way, you're running a business and this is your life. So you need to be putting money away for retirement. You need to be putting money into savings with every single client that sits in your chair. And then it's just like their minds are blown. We've blown their price out of the water. We're now, $100, if not over.
Yeah.
And so we go, okay, so here we go. This is why we discuss pricing. This is why we discuss money, because you're undercharging yourself in most cases. And obviously this is a service-based business, but you can follow the same protocol for anything really. And once we kind of go through this, holy moly, I'm undercharging, I'm losing money, you quickly realize if someone's going to sit in your chair, better be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's worth it financially or whoever's sitting in that chair is going to provide you additional opportunities, or it's going to give you that clout on your resume that you're looking for, whatever it might be, it's got to be worth it. And it's got to be worth X amount, because now we know the math.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start looking at things from that perspective, going back to the saying no discussion, it becomes very easy to say no when you're like, oh, actually, I'm going to have to write this person a check to do their makeup. And when you start thinking about it from that perspective, like, I'm going to really, at the bottom line, I have to pay them money to do their makeup. Everything stops. Mm-hmm. And so now we're looking at our business from a logical perspective. We're able to look at our value and what we do and what we bring to the table and what our special sauce is, and really hone in on that. And yes, sometimes we have to reduce expenses and, there's other things that have to come in. You don't get to spend, $2,000 a month on play makeup. Like, you don't need that much. I don't even need that much. But it gives you a lot of perspective. And then you start to realize, like, what is my time worth?
Yeah.
And what are we saying yes to and what are we saying no to? It becomes crystal clear.
Yeah. There's sure people try to barter, right? And
of
like,
course.
what kind of discounts can you give me? Like, is this the best you can do? Like, what is there a bulk? If I have 7 bridesmaids and like, is there less,
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because once you know, then you go, no, 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 no. Like, I'm not paying you to do your makeup. Sorry, that's not happening. So, no, it's like, would you ever go into a doctor's office and ask for a discount? Never. You wouldn't even cross your mind.
Right.
So why would you do that in this case?
What a great analogy. Because you're right. You would never go into, or even like a hairdresser, and be like, oh, can you give me a discount on my haircut?
No.
No, you just know the pricing up front and you pay it, right? So I think that that's a really interesting thing is when you deal with the owner and you're on the phone and you talk to people one-on-one, people feel this inclination where they're like, oh, I could probably pay less
Yeah.
for the service. But in reality, I mean, how often do you get that question?
I get it fairly often.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you set up a business for a wedding and pricing, like it's set up differently than it would be if we were doing a photo shoot for a business, right? So that's like a day rate versus a per head rate. And so specifically on weddings, they will be like, oh, well, I have 10 people. And I'm like, great, but I'm going to need 2 artists. And, we're talking to each other for almost 2 years before the actual wedding happens. So no, there is no discount. It happens a lot. But when you're firm and you have that in the back of your mind, like, okay, this is how much it costs me for every single person that sits in my chair, it becomes very easy to say, no, we don't offer discounts. Thank you. This is our rate.
Knowing your bottom line, I think, is just such an important key point here because so many businesses just don't. They don't know what their expenses are. They don't know what they're spending per week. Like, they just kind of think it's monopoly money versus like, this is real money that you have to spend on all these things, plus your time, plus your energy. And I think that's just such an important message because it does make the decisions a lot easier when you know this person is costing me money versus this person is making money,
Right.
And
I think also it goes back into that the feeling like,
yeah,
does this person make me feel good? Am I obsessed with this person? Is this like how I want to be spending my day away from my children? I know that not everybody's in that position, but that's what I think about. Like, do I love them so much that I'm willing to spend time away from my kid?
yeah.
Or my kids? Well, then it might be worth it. But if you get that kind of icky feeling or just like, ooh, I don't really know how I feel about that, it's very, very, very simple to say no. And I've taught this in front of not only makeup artists, but like doctors and yoga teachers and lawyers. And everyone kind of has that aha moment because you just were like, oh, yeah, I guess I didn't really think about how much it costs me to interact with that one person. And if that one person isn't filling me up or I'm not filling them up, it should be this, both ways.
Yeah.
Let's not do it.
Right.
Let's spend our time doing something else.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, so that's, making and generating revenue for your business is different than your personal viewpoint on money.
Yes.
Right? So these are like 2 different categories. One is like what drives revenue for the business to keep the business alive and to provide income. But then personally, your viewpoint on money is a little different.
Right. So I was always brought up in a household where you like worried about the money later. Like if it felt right to you, if that was something you really wanted to do, you wanted to buy that house, you wanted to go to that college, you wanted to play that sport, like let's pursue it and worry about the money later. The money will figure itself out. Do what you need to do. And it's not normal. Most people are fearful of money. And that's why I love talking about it so much is because if you address it head on and you start talking about it, it really, as I told you before, like I perceive money as a digit on a screen. It's nothing more than that. That's it. It's a pixel. And when you start thinking about it that way, it becomes a lot easier to perceive it as a tool instead of something to be fearful of or to hang on to or to make decisions because you need the money.
Right.
And so being brought up in a household where you worry less about the money and you just kind of like went for it. Obviously, you need to be responsible, but you just take the leap knowing that you can trust yourself and that you can always bank on yourself. And if you know that you're going to work hard and at the end of the day, no matter what, you're going to land on your feet, it's going to be okay. And so when I make decisions around my business or say no to a discount or say no to a client, I am taking that leap and I am not letting money determine what I'm doing or how I'm doing things. I'm going to do what's in alignment for me, what feels best for me and my client, and I'm going to make decisions accordingly. Money shouldn't be the thing that's holding you back.
Yeah. Any last advice or, number one, how do people find you? If they're like, this is the right person for me to do my makeup. We have a lot of people that are going to be younger watching this, ready to get married. And if they are like, this team is who I want to do my makeup, can you tell us how to find you? And then any other tips or advice that you have for anyone that might be watching?
Yeah. Find us on my website, ashleyfierro.com, or on Instagram, Ashley Fierro MUA. But I think ultimately my best tip for any entrepreneur at this stage in the game is just figure out what your secret sauce is. Figure out what makes you feel good, what lights you up inside, and that's what you should be doing. It's so hard because when you have these opportunities that are sort of like adjacent to that thing that lights you up inside, it's very easy to say yes. And there will be time early in your career that you will say yes. And it's important to do so because you start to realize, what do I like? What do I not like? Did that feel good? Was that an interesting experience? Is there something there? Okay, maybe not. Let's try this one. Okay, that felt better, and it really does help you kind of hone in on what lights you up inside. And as time goes by, you really realize, like, okay, this is where I'm meant to be. And don't ignore what lights you up inside if it doesn't fit into the mold of what everybody else is doing, because that actually, in essence, is your secret. That is what you bring to the table that's different from everybody else. I always tell my students, like, I love to share what I do and how I do it because there's room for all of us.
Yeah.
There's a million makeup artists or hobbyists, but there's a million of them out there. And I'm like, bring it on. The more the merrier, because we all bring something cool and special to the table, and like figure out what that is for you. And that is the direction that you should really be pressing the gas on, is your thing that brings you joy.
I think collaboration versus competition is just such an important element there, because you're right. A lot of times people are like, well, if I help this person, they're going to take my clients.
No.
Or if I work with this person, they're going to be better than me. It's like, that doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't build friendships. It doesn't build collaboration. Like, you can learn something from everybody. So I think that's a really good key point. Do you find that that's challenging in this industry?
My industry is like the epitome of do not share any information. That is kind of the mindset. And it's funny because if we even look at the wedding industry, you'll see florists where they collaborate together. Maybe one florist got the job, but the competing florist is helping them set up.
Yeah.
It's collaborative. And I'm like, why? Why in the beauty is it so catty? Why is it so like, oh, I'm not going to tell you what, how much I charge or how I got this client, or hey, I need extra help. Could you come help me?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't exist for a very long time. I'm seeing little kind of movements in the right direction, but it is an industry that's set up that way because not very many people become successful at it because they don't really know how to run a business. They might be an incredible artist, but they don't know how to run a business, or they don't know how to do social media, or whatever it might be. So the more you share and the more you bring in your friends and the more you say, hey, I'm not available, but this person's amazing, and not be scared that the client's not going to call again. That's always the fear, like, oh, they're going to use them and then fall in love. The second you let that go, it's just like you open yourself up to so many more opportunities, and it's like a positive flow of energy instead of this like stagnant like brick wall around you and your business.
Such a good piece of feedback. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me. It's just been so great. I know it's going to help so many young entrepreneurs and people in different industries kind of discover what they want to do. And I've just been enlightened talking to you. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Yes.
Yay.